Welcome to another edition of On Air, the online format of the Swiss AI Weeks and Wildcard Media. Today we have Karthik Muralidharan, sorry,
Good, no worries.
from HotellerieSuisse, with a talk about digital human ethics and empathy in AI-driven hospitality. I'm really looking forward to that. The session will be streamed on YouTube. We'll have the option to Q&A at the end of the session. Please post your questions in the chat. And that's it. And Karthik, I would like to hand it over to you. Have fun. The stage is yours.
Perfect. Thanks so much. First of all, welcome everyone to this kind of presentation about being digitally human. Let me just start sharing my screen. So here we go. I hope that it is visible for everybody now. And so, yeah, my name is Karthik Muralidharan. I'm a project manager for AI and digitization at HotellerieSuisse. And kind of the goal that I have is to bring this whole concept of digitization and AI closer, not only to the hotel directors, but also to the startups that work within this ecosystem and connect these kind of different points, right? We're taught when we talk about hospitality, we often think about the hotel industry. There's also, certain aspects of tourism, but it's all a very long-lasting tradition, especially in Switzerland. But Switzerland is also one of the most innovative countries in the world, if not the most innovative country, depending on which ranking you look at. And bringing those two kind of factors together, the aspect of traditionalism and innovation, has been something quite fascinating and quite interesting to do. And so I hope to kind of guide you through this journey a little bit, to also look at what kind of ethical implications come with that, and kind of how do we maintain this humanity within this kind of changing world. And to kind of first preface also the presentation, of course, we're in the Swiss AI Weeks. It is generated with AI. All of the images are AI generated, as well as some of the content that I obviously curated together with. This time I tried to use Gemini a little bit more, getting a bit more used to using different tools as well. And so the first thing we'll do is move on to the next slide, where we really have to talk about kind of two scenarios, right? We have the aspect of the robo hotel, which we saw in Japan, which was a really interesting use case, but it very quickly led to a lot of friction between the guests and the kind of environment that they were staying in. And very quickly, they had to actually rehire some human employees. It was not much, there was just a couple, but nonetheless, having that human accessibility was something which they had to bring in. And then you have the human touch, which in Swiss hospitality is kind of the marker of this industry. It is the heartbeat of our industry, the human exchange. And so with this huge kind of boom of AI, especially over the last 3-4 years, how can we keep that humanity when we feel like we're constantly talking more and more just to digital products? And that's something that we're going to look at a little bit. And so one thing we have to also accept is that change is inevitable. As you can see, 41% of Swiss hotels are already using some form of AI technology. That does not necessarily mean generative AI, of course, but some form of AI technology is in use. 16% are, planning to adopt it within the next year, and 76% report that they've actually improved kind of certain factors, be it time saving or certain financial aspects. And so it's not something that we can just accept as, hey, this is this fun little thing that's happening outside, and we can stick to our humanity and our human nature. But tech and digitization, that's an external thing. No, it is something that is very real in pretty much every industry, including something that is so human driven as the hospitality industry. And so some of the forces that are really pushing this change is the all too well known, I think, labor shortage within the country. Um, We're seeing especially a lot of skilled labor shortages within the hotel industry, and there's a very large need to empower people who might have lower levels of skills to upskill them and then make them really quickly very competent within these kind of more technical roles within the hotel industry. It's also about efficiency. The more we travel, the more we get used to tech, we also expect more. Um, this was, kind of an example that I think is very pertinent for a lot of people. If if you needed an answer from a certain business partner, maybe say 20 or 30 years ago, yeah, especially 30 years ago, you would have had to wait days, if not weeks, for your letter to reach them, for them to write a response, for that letter to then come back to you before the existence of email. Then emails became a thing, and it was still a bit new, so not everyone had like a really good access to it, etc. Also with fax machines, of course, in between, I skipped a lot of steps. But to give you just an example, the idea of how we really expect in our day-to-day life things to be super, super quick. Um, and that has just become more the case with social media, with the constant accessibility to instant communication, and with AI as well. And so guests are expecting that service and communication happens instantly. We no longer can wait and just say, okay, until we can wait till the check-in, or we can have some communication gaps and like have some time to respond. No, it has to be immediate. And so with AI, this is obviously a very easy thing to do and a very easy thing to kind of optimize on. Additionally, we have the aspect of personalization. More and more guests are really, really seeking personalization because it's no longer okay to just have a general kind of aspect of some experiences that are curated for the general public. We all want something that is super personalized to us, that is super special to what we want to achieve during this holiday. Be it, if it's a business trip, you might have a really, really high focus on a really quick check-in, check-out. If you're having a more leisure trip, you might be looking more at having really curated experiences around the area, in the region, those kind of aspects. And with AI, obviously, that kind of personalization is finally actually possible. Um, and so one thing we need to also then look at is how are they using it, right? I just mentioned that they're using it, but how are they actually using it? A very big part is content generation, which, you can have your feelings about it, and we'll get a bit into that later on. But a lot of hotels use it to craft their marketing materials, especially guest communications as well, from pre-check-in or post-check-in. That's something we can really optimize with these kind of generative AI tools, especially. Social media content is now largely pushed by AI's tools. Um, and also, and this is what we kind of try to put the emphasis more on, is freeing up staff to actually interact with the guest, right? So think about like if you have a front office staff having to take some pictures in the lobby, because not every hotel, because especially smaller hotels, are not going to have the employees to have like a fully run dedicated marketing department. Instead of running around taking pictures for social media or writing up a post for social media, they can actually talk to the guests that are in the house present over there. Another big one is review analysis. So sometimes we get a bit caught up in like one or two negative reviews, but the reality is that in today's world, people tend to write negative reviews significantly more than positive reviews. So earlier we used to kind of say that one negative review needs to be counterbalanced by about seven positive reviews. Um, and that's becoming more and more intense, which is why such a review analysis is really, really helpful. Because then you can kind of differentiate between the reviews that actually have an impact on your business and the reviews that are simply either a disgruntled guest who had one small thing happen bad and they kind of made it a much bigger deal, or a guest that is maybe trying to get something for free, which is also very, very often the case in this industry. Um, and the last point that we're seeing very, very often is dynamic pricing. You've probably seen it anytime you've booked a flight. Maybe you've seen it as well at some hotels, but especially in the airline industry, it's pretty much the norm. You look at the prices today, and they're maybe about 400 francs, and then you look at it tomorrow, and suddenly it's up by to 600 or 700 francs. Or if you've ever tried booking a flight between the say 14th of December and 20th of December or 24th of December, you can also at this point you can push it that far already. Those prices are insanely high compared to any other time of the year, right? So those are the kind of things where dynamic pricing helps to adjust the price according to seasonality, according to the demand, which can also be beneficial for the guest because if you, for example, go to a hotel in the middle of January, you have a much higher likelihood of getting a pretty good price. And so all of this comes kind of to this core conflict. It's about efficiency versus empathy. Because you can make a hotel where everything is completely automated. Everything is super efficient. You might not need any employees there. But where does the human touch go, right? Where does the human relationship go, the communication go? And so it's about finding a balance between these 2 points in order to create, as I wrote, to kind of like resolve this paradox without losing the soul of especially the industry as a whole, but also for your own business specifically. And so the kind of thing that we need to also go from an educational point of view is that we need to focus more on the emotional intelligence aspects and look and push humans to do more creative solutions. That way we can really focus on what makes a human really human. And this way, if, for example, if you look at the statistics at the statistic at the last point, 75% of travelers prefer speaking with a human for complex or emotionally nuanced issues, which you have to take with a caveat. That information is obviously based on the current state of digital tools. And so that'll also probably change over time. But at the minute, that's the case. And so sometimes we just want to also have someone who might understand our feelings, understand our pain, and not just from an algorithmic point of view, but more from a human point of view. And so it's about also training the staff, training the next generation to understand these kind of things and really build upon those competencies instead of the usual kind of hard fact competences that we used to kind of lay the emphasis on. And then there's obviously the issue of over automation. Because as I said, I mean, and again, it's a danger, but at the same time, there might be a use case. And I do want to put that there as well. I don't want to, stand here and say, oh, we shouldn't automate and we shouldn't like digitize. Not at all. My point is more, there are use cases for it where you might want to automate in general for the hotel industry, if you want to have that hospitality aspect, the human touch, the human connection, the conversations that we can have in such a public kind of open space, create a meeting space, create a place where people can connect with each other, not just with the staff, but also amongst a community. That is what is kind of unique about this industry. And there will be cases where that makes sense, but there will absolutely be cases where you're here for a business meeting. You might be in the hotel for one night. You need to check in at 11 p.m. because that's when your flight lands. And the next day you're leaving at like 10 a.m. because you have to then go back to the other country, and your meeting is between 8 and 9 or whatever. It's a very abrupt example, but you can imagine what I'm trying to get at. Does it really make sense then to have a staff or a hotel lobby person who's going to talk to you and have a conversation with you? Probably not. At that point, you probably just want to get in, check in, sleep, get out, check out, and get out, right? So there is a danger of over automating the industry as a whole, but you need to look at it from a use case to use case situation. And so we really try to lay the focus on augmenting the experience through digitization. So more humanity through digitalization, where AI does kind of like the routine stuff in the background, right? The sentiment analysis, the some of the review responses depending on the hotels, because some hotels anyway already use standardized formats. If they're writing it personal, then I would not recommend that they remove that. It's quite nice sometimes, especially for a smaller hotel. Um, or for example, with the check-in process, a check-in person has to, the check-in person, sorry, the front office person has to always put in all of the details of your passport or your ID within the system. And those kind of things can be automated, and then it's just way faster. And then you can have more of a conversation with the guest, talk about, kind of the things that they want to do. If maybe they want some recommendations for restaurants or for attractions around the area, etc. And that then creates more what we call high touch moments, where you can actually have a deeper conversation with the guest to actually convince them to maybe see your favorite restaurant or see your favorite kind of location within this city, which, we all have our local spots that we like, which maybe we don't want foreigners to be there, but it might be useful if you're trying to actually bring more people, more tourists to actually go to a bit location and raise the business over there, for example, right? Um, and through that, we can really create a symbiotic relationship where technology and humans can work together. And, again, the technology does analysis, routine tasks really, really, really good. Let it do that, but leave the human tasks to the humans. And so one of the things that we also try to focus on is uh, data privacy and the Swiss brand, right? Especially in the current political climate and the current social climate, it is probably more important than ever that we kind of keep a certain national identity. And especially in something like the tourism industry, which is so unique from country to country. Um, this aspect is something where we try to really foster the brand of Swiss hospitality. And one of the aspects that we want to try to pivot on is that the tech aspect, the digital aspect, also still puts kind of like privacy, trust, discretion, quality, the typical kind of landmarks of Swiss quality still in the center. Instead of, just telling everyone to go use whatever American tool that they might come across. Of course, we also have the FADP, or which is basically the data privacy laws within Switzerland. And these are the kind of things which we try to communicate as much as possible to our members so that they can ensure that the tools that they use also adhere to these kind of things. Um, this is a bit more kind of like legal jargon. These are obviously not necessarily very ethical foundation, not ethical implications, but nonetheless, legal implications have certain ethical implications inherently. Then is the aspect of fairness and dignity, and which goes more into kind of the topic of bias, right? So we have, for example, the common problem that a lot of Swiss hotels, or a lot of hotels in general, this is quite a cross-border of a bit of an issue. The hotels have their websites maybe only in one or two languages. Now, if the analysis can only happen in those one or two languages, the SEO or the AIO or whatever you may call it, happens only in those languages, the actual kind of recommendations that go towards the guest can be quite minimized. It has quite a negative impact on that factor. And so we want to try to leverage AI to kind of reduce that barrier, to also create the private, like the individualization at a higher level than it is right now, and also allow for these kind of optimizations on the online space to be a bit more seamless. Encourage also to make it easy for your guest who may either be of an older demographic or might be potentially even handicapped to be able to actually access your website without having any sort of barriers, just because, the hotel manager or the business owner didn't want to make their website multilingual or accessible for someone like that. Um, the another one is pricing bias, because this is something you might have also realized, or maybe you don't, and I'm going to burst a little bit of a bubble here for you. In Switzerland, if you look for a flight going out of Switzerland, the prices are just going to always be way, way higher. If you look for the same flight going out of India, the prices are going to be way lower. And I'm saying this out of experience. That's why I use the example of India as well. And so this kind of stuff can really be tricky when the data and the AI and the tools kind of start prioritizing certain types of guests ahead of others. You want to make sure that, you don't discriminate certain groups, etc., based on statistical data that might be misrepresented or misunderstood. And then we have the issue of hiring inequality, which, the Swiss hospitality industry has about, I think, 51% female quota of, not a quota, but a allocation in the industry. So 51% of the employees in the hospitality industry are women, which sounds great, right? We're really close to that 50 mark, and that's amazing. But if you go a bit more further into that data, you start to see in the higher positions, in the directorial positions, in the general manager positions, that number dwindles really, really quickly. And it's improving, and we've had honestly a few really, really good years in kind of creating a better balance between those two things. But it is nonetheless something that flows into historical data. Historically, men have been in these kind of power positions, whereas women have been more in the service positions. So if you have a recruitment AI that sees, someone applying for a director of food and beverage, there you have to be aware that there might be an inherent bias to hire the man ahead of hiring the woman, because historically men have been more present in those positions. The same way for a service staff, you might end up hiring a woman instead of a man because women have been more present in that position. And those kind of things have to just be, it's not that you have to, constantly pay attention to it, but you have to be aware of the fact that this is happening. Data is biased. As much as we'd like to say that it isn't sometimes, it very much is. And it's important that we just keep an eye on that and just have that in the back of our head. Where is the data coming from? What are the decisions based on that are being made? And so, in order to kind of try to, avoid it as much as possible, because again, it is tricky because it is inherently built into our scientific system, unfortunately. It's important to show, or to at least know, where your data is coming from. I'm sure you've met a lot of people or had a lot of employees who would bring data out and just have no kind of sources to back it up. Um, that's really, really dangerous, right? And I know I've thrown around a lot of figures without mentioning any sources. I can provide all of those sources if requested. Um, but that is really important to kind of create that transparency. Make sure that, people know what, at least you need to know what is the basis of the decisions that are being made. For example, if the prices in Locarno are super, super high during a certain period of time, you might also want to know that the Locarno Film Festival is also happening around that time. Uh, the data will show it and the pricing will be adjusted accordingly because the system knows it. But you might also need to know that for various other kind of implications as well. Um, or for also justifying to a certain guest segment saying, look, the prices are just this high right now because the Eurovision Song Contest is in Basel this year, or the prices are so high right now because the Women's Euros is being played at the moment, or whatever the reason may be. You need to be able to justify it because otherwise it just seems like you're trying to price gouge people and you're trying to rip them off. The other thing is is to make sure that the data that you have is also current and that you figure out if there is any inherent biases within it. Um, you may not be able to remove the bias because it's a bit tricky to do that sometimes. It's a bit of an ethical, kind of philosophical question because to what extent can you let your human intuition override statistical data? Um, but at the same time, it might be good to be aware of the kind of drawbacks that your data sets and your tools have. And by doing kind of like some tests through your HR or through various other systems, depending on what kind of tool you're using, it can be really useful to have a deep understanding of this kind of algorithmic bias that exists. And then always, always have a human override, have a human look over it. I know it is very tempting to allow these tools to just spew out something and just accept it as fact. If you sum two cells in an Excel, it's not like I'm questioning whether that calculation is correct, but I still think that it's important to kind of make sure that someone who is competent in that field does just take a look over it, especially when it is something that impacts other humans, other people. Um, just make sure that, you have somebody who's responsible to make sure that the information that is flowing actually is correct and doesn't have any sort of weird kind of outlying information in it. And so I want to show you also some I think I've been fairly negative so far on AI, but there's a lot of really, really cool use cases of AI. So one that is quite a well-known one, which again goes into the revenue management system, is Room Price Genie. And again, I want to remind all of the images are AI generated. This is not how any of the platforms look, but just, stick with me. Room Price Genie is really great to kind of make sure that the pricing that you offer is adjusted according to the area that you're in and really makes a very, very good dynamic pricing system. While Lobby AI is a more kind of direct tool in order to make guest reservations, guest responses a little bit easier. Kind of take away the email aspect from the front office, especially where a lot of front office clerks they have to spend a lot of time writing emails. Lobby AI kind of just takes that a little bit away from them so that they can focus more on having interactions with the guest, while bookings in the system, for example, room bookings, etc., that are triggered by email, which is still a very large number of bookings for the people who are not within the industry. Um, that all gets automated. And so you don't need to have a special kind of like booking system in the background necessarily, but it obviously integrates with those systems. And then Room Price Genie can also help to figure out the correct pricing in order to then send that back to the guest. Some other examples are Kitro, which is a really, really cool kind of, it's a food scale which uses AI within the camera systems to figure out how much food waste is being generated and then suggest how to cut costs, how to reduce the kind of food waste. It also has a pretty good differentiation between avoidable food waste and not avoidable food waste. For example, let's say eggshells. Eggshells are usually considered an unavoidable food waste. There are some restaurants that have started using them in certain ways, in certain creative ways, but in general, they're considered unavoidable. And so that compared to maybe carrot peels, where you can make a stock or something like that, those kind of differences. And then Swisscom has their AI platform where they're really kind of going in on the kind of sovereign AI infrastructure, making sure that you have data within Switzerland that is protected, that is, adherent to our data privacy laws, that will also be adherent to any AI legislation that may come in the next few months. And so Swisscom is just really, really good when it comes to making sure that your data is actually safe, it's in this trusted area, and that it kind of maintains that privacy aspect that we really, really desire within our data frameworks. Um, and so if we look at kind of like the workforce that we have is also people have more anxiety than ever before. It's really something where students don't know what to study because AI has kind of like thrown everything a bit in a whirlwind. Um, it's the same thing for a lot of employees. You might be experiencing it. Maybe some of your employees are experiencing it, or colleagues, or friends, and it's a bit of an uncertain time. And I think it's important to communicate to people to learn how to use these tools because the biggest threat to you is not AI. The biggest threat to you is being replaced by AI. Then it's also the willingness to delegate, right? You need to be willing to give the tasks to AI. And yeah, it's about automating routines, right? It's about automating the kind of aspects that can actually be done by AI, be it emails or any sort of processes that you might have in the background. And so again, it's about elevating people. It's about making them more human focused and less replaced. These are the kind of aspects that we try to focus on, a little bit more AI literacy, train people to actually understand what AI is, not just generative AI, but AI as a whole, help them to enhance their soft skills, and create this human AI partnership, this connection between the two, and the symbiotic relationship between the two. And these are the kind of questions that you need to ask yourself, right? Is your AI transparent? Who is accountable in the end? Because the AI is not going to be accountable. Somebody within your company is accountable. Can humans intervene? Can they actually, is it possible for humans to intervene, or is the process so automated that there's no oversight? And does the data or the technology exclude anyone? Try to ask yourself these questions when you implement a tool or when you implement a process. And if the answer to any of them is I don't know or no, or well, if it doesn't exclude it, does it exclude anyone? Yes, then you might have to reconsider the process, and you might have to really ask yourself, is the profit that I'm making worth completely throwing away any sort of values and privacy and security that I would want for myself? And so we really want to, again, elevate people. We want to use ethics as an advantage, leverage ethics, and create a hybrid future where we have both the human nature, but also the automated aspect of AI, and bring those together, work together with the tool, because it is a tool. It's not its own kind of facet. And so I'd really like to thank you guys at this point and open up for questions and discussion. Again, AI and ethics, I think, is something we need to really, really pay attention to, because we tend to forget very quickly that technology is there to make us more human, not less so. Thank you. So I just see in the chat there's a question from Maria Fan. Is it possible to use AI to do the job and just monitoring the result take a step forward before being replaced by AI? Absolutely. And again, I mean, as long as you have those, as I said in those last few questions, if you have the oversight, if you have the view of what is happening, and is there a bias? Is there some sort of a factor which might violate some sort of, I mean, again, ignoring necessarily the legal aspect, it should always be legal. But if it violates some sort of ethical aspect, ask yourself whether it does that. And if it does, then if you're unsure whether it does, you need to change the process in order to adhere to so that you can actually figure out whether it has a problem there. I hope that answers your question. Because again, you can absolutely automate it if you have the knowledge for sure that it is perfectly ethical and has a good process behind it. Maybe to while if there's no other questions, but I'll just expand on this. If you look at, for example, Room Price Genie, they have dynamic pricing, but every hotel has the possibility to adjust the pricing manually and kind of change things, because sometimes the pricing really goes haywire if there's like multiple big events at once that are outliers, and they expect a lot of bookings to come in. And so the hotel always has the opportunity to adjust the bookings on their own. So if, for example, let's say, a guest that has been coming to your hotel for the last 30 years wants to book exactly during that time, you might want to give them a room at a normal price, not at a super inflated price, and you can then adjust it and still, do those kind of things. So always have kind of a place where the human can intervene. What training data are used to ensure ethical data? Do we have these data? Um, it's unfortunately a little bit of a difficult question to answer, because it really depends on the tool, right? So a lot of tools are connecting to LLMs that are based in the US at the moment, because those tend to be the larger, kind of bigger, more impactful LLMs, say from OpenAI or say from Meta, etc. And the problem is that we just do not know, and this is it's a very conscious thing that these companies do. We don't know what the training data really is. And we don't know where the data is being stored and how it's being processed. And it's again a conscious effort from those companies because having that transparency is only negative for them. The good thing is we have Apertus from the Swiss, from ETH and EPFL, as well as some other partners. I know I'm missing out a lot of partners in that project. It was a huge project, and I want to give all of them credit, but those are the ones that are stayed in my mind. Um, and that is a Swiss LLM system. And so that is the large language model that backs up this like the Swiss AI system. And I really would love to see more Swiss companies, pick it. It's fairly new, so I'm sure it'll happen. I'd love to see more Swiss companies kind of pick it up and really bring it to the forefront and kind of have it as a central system within their ecosystem. And I think that would be really, really cool. Uh, is it ethical to use AI to do the job and accept multiple jobs? Would employers have ways to stop employees to use AI? Um, so to do the job, yeah, why not? Because it would be like asking, um, is it ethical to use a computer? Now I could write, and my handwriting is really, really bad. I didn't grow up. I grew up with a computer pretty much, so my handwriting is really, really awful. But there was a time when there used to be a talk about, oh, people are gonna lose their handwriting, and that is awful. And how can we lose this kind of like skill? But the reality is now we just don't need it. And so to do a job, it is absolutely ethical. It is where it starts being more of a question is, of course, when we move into the legal framework, because certain pieces of data you should not feed into AI, or into open AI systems. Um, Accepting multiple jobs is again more of a legal framework. If your employers agree and if you are within the labor laws of Switzerland, which tend to restrict the amount of hours you can legally have on paper, and then you declare everything and or if for your taxes, etc., 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 then you can accept multiple jobs. There's a lot of people that I know also that do more than one job, but it's usually, they'll have like 60% in one job, 20% somewhere else, 10% somewhere else. And that used to be a lot harder, I think, to do, especially if they were all cognitive jobs. AI helps you to kind of organize that aspect a little bit better. Um, and an employer can absolutely stop employees from using AI. Um, but again, it's you're only shooting yourself in the foot. Um, in the sense that the employer, if so we have a lot of statistical data on this, and I don't have the research papers on hand, so I don't want to, say any random numbers. But we have some good data that also shows that a lot of people are using where AI has been banned or was banned at least. A lot of employees just started using it without oversight, and that is so much more dangerous than if you as a business make the decision, hey, you can use AI with these systems in these cases, don't feed data, train your staff to actually use it in an ethical and responsible manner. Um, but in the end, if you tell them to not use it, they're still going to use it. They're just not going to tell you. And so there isn't really a way to stop it, and I don't think you should, because it would be like if you were a company that said, "Hey, you can't use a computer anymore because I don't know. It's you could go onto the internet and be going onto news websites while during work hours. How are you going to stop that? Right? So I hope that also addresses your question, both of your questions, Vivian and Maria. And for the people who are not in the chat right now, please just head into the chat. There'll be there's some information also coming for the a short survey and stuff like that. Has the Swiss LLM been evaluated in terms of the values it represents? I'll be honest, I'm not clued up enough about it. The kind of media press release that came out about it, and I'm sure that there's been also a lot of talks during the Swiss AI weeks as well about this. So maybe go through the website and you'll find some.
6 to verify this call. Confirmed. Thank you. Goodbye.
But the Swiss LLM is supposed to, according to the press release, adhere to Swiss values. whatever those may be, however you may want to define those. But yeah, that was my understanding. I don't want to say too much because, again, I'm not clued up enough about that.
Wonderful, Karthik. Thank you so much for this very interesting insight presentation.
Thank
I
you
think
very much.
there are not any more questions. We thank you very, very much to this session. If you're interested, you can check out more sessions, and this session will be on YouTube of the Swiss AI Week. So go there. Please give us a rating. And that's it for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.